All right, and welcome, Sarah Bradshaw here on 90.9 The Bridge. And we've got a really very special guest for us today. Connor Curley of the band Fontaines DC came together over a love of poetry. They met when they were in college. And then Fontaines, also of the love of the Godfather movie, which I know many Americans will share that love and people all over the world. The DC, however, though, and some Americans might tend toward the notion of the District of Columbia. That is absolutely not true with this band. It's Dublin City. And Connor, is that something that, do people from Dublin call it Dublin City?
I suppose we were originally called just the Fontaines, which was kind of our version of like, I suppose if when I think about the start of our band, I think we're probably at the very very tail end of like the sort of indie 2000s thing. So I feel like the Fontaines is probably the most like generic kind of indie name that we could come up with that would kind of sounds cool. It sounds like five young guys who have you know um, aspirations of being Strokes or whatever. But yeah, it just so happened that there was another band called the Fontaines in America, and they wrote to us asking us to change. And then I think it was an Irish band called the Frames who had a similar thing where whenever they toured in America, they put up their like on the venues, it would say the Frames, DC, Dublin City.
Right.
So the band being at that time, our music was kind of starting to be very reflecting. A lot of the songs we were writing were starting to reflect certain certain imagery of the city. So it just kind of seemed to fit that we would be Fontaines DC.
Well, and you mentioned that, and you're, again, referring to your album, Doggerel, which, I mean, it did, when you listen to that album, and granted, I've never been to Dublin, so I can't speak to this personally, but just from what I've gotten, the little bits that I've gotten from popular culture, that album feels very Dublin. Everything in the music, the guitars, and then with Hero's Death, which just came out earlier this year, it's definitely different. And you are very much exploring the notion of furthering your artistry. And I think at one point I even read Grian had said it's a refusal to bow to any preconceived notions or expectations. And can you talk a little bit more about that?
For Hero's Death.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose we were very wary of having a first album that was perceived as being successful by people, and people having expectations of us, kind of capitalizing on that by maybe just giving the fans that we had music that was similar to what had worked for us. And I think we were just very conscious from the start that that's not something that we wanted to do at all. We wanted to kind of go back to the core of where that album came from, which was the five of us trying to write the best music that we could, and not letting the sort of influence of our own, of our own genre that we had kind of maybe dabbled with in Doggerel dictate where the second was going to go. So we kind of just left there be no walls or like no limits to where we would get inspiration from, be it like a Chet Baker song, or like even if it's not even music, it's just a sound of like traffic and stuff like that. And I think the most important thing was like all those inspirations were put through the kind of the judgment of the five of us, and the five of us, whenever we had time last year, really trying to dictate what we thought was good and what really like turned us on as musicians. So that was kind of I suppose what Graham was talking about when he says not bowing down to our own success, kind of.
Yeah. You all are, I mean, you're relatively young band. You haven't been together very long. And then how has it been? Because you're joining me on a Zoom call here, which this has become the kind of standard for band interviews recently. And, I'm in my closet in Kansas City, Missouri right now. And you're on a houseboat in London. You released A Hero's Death in the height of a pandemic. Can you talk to some of the differences between the releases of, say, something like Doggerel and what you all experienced with A Hero's Death?
Yeah, I suppose with Doggerel, it was kind of a very strange realization that, but especially then because we were really working really hard to push that album. And like at the time of it being released, we were playing, you know, in stores, like, or in the UK, we were playing in stores, like say at 3 o'clock during the day, and then we'd play a show at night, and then we did that for like maybe 2 weeks or something, and we were just like really burnt out. And it kind of felt like, you know, whenever you release an album that way, it's like you really give people the music. The music isn't yours anymore. It's just like you've given them that now, and like it's your job just to kind of stand there and like, you know, facilitate their digestion of the music and their thoughts of it. And I suppose it was a very hard thing to come to terms with, because it was kind of, it was mental to me that you kind of lose ownership of something that you've worked so hard on. But I suppose that's what you do it for. You do it to spread the thing that you created. And like just kind of talking about what we experienced with this album, it's kind of been a lot more. Felt really nice to, you know, release it and not have to like tour it as extensively, because it, like, it still feels like our music, and I still listen to the album because like I'm not playing it live every night, and I'm not, like, I still listen to it for fun, and like kind of it just kind of feels a lot more like it feels a lot more like it's ours still, which is a very strange difference. And with the Zoom calls, I'm kind of enjoying it, to be honest, man. It's although like it's kind of nice just to, like, you know, I kind of feel like I have more of a 9 to 5 job now. You know, it's like, oh, I get my Zoom call done, and then, you know, get back to making my beans and toast. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, obviously, I'd like there to go back to a normality, and I'd like to, like, say if it's next year, around this time next year when it's normal again, like, I'd love if we had like another album out, and then we'd start touring 2 albums that have never been played live before. I think that would be amazing. You know, like, not that there's any plans put in place for that, but just for myself, I feel like we talk a lot about, like, you know, the Brian Jonestown, like the way that they've released music for the past 25 years. And it's just like, you know, 2 albums a year, sometimes 3 albums a year. And he just puts it out and it's all amazing. And it's just like, we want to be able to have that we want to be like as prolific as that, because we feel like that we might be able to do that. And that's not like I don't know. And that's what would just give us a lot of like satisfaction in what we can do, because we feel like we have the music in us. So why not? Why keep waiting until it makes sense to release music? Just like work on it and release it whenever you can. Like, you know.
You took the thought and the word right out of my mouth, because I was going to say, I mean, I guess you should expect it from a band of poets, people who are into poetry and poets. You've released 2 books of poetry, but you all are prolific. I mean, again, you are a young band. You've already released 2 full-length albums. We mentioned before we hopped on the call here that you had mentioned you're on a houseboat right now working on writing more songs. And do you want to speak to that process? Like, what does collaboration in the time of COVID look like for Fontaines DC?
I suppose right now it's what I kind of we were all, before I came here, we were all staying in a house together, which was mad because we'd been separate for so long, you know, all off like kind of doing different things, which was really good that we had that kind of separation for a while. It was a lot of just sitting around the table, you know, with acoustics and playing songs. We wrote so much in like kind of quarantine. All of us have kind of been working on these like demos of, like, you know, music that would probably never end up being Fontaine's music, but like, you know, it was just kind of pushing the boat out. Like, I was trying to work a lot more on like trying to understand how strings work, and I know like a few of the lads are like trying to focus on maybe more like electronic, like drum machine kind of stuff. And yeah, I feel like now we're just trying to harness in again, like the stuff that we've learned, and like the stuff that we still like from, like, you know, like we still love to write a very abrasive post-punk song whenever the feeling is there to do that. So yeah, we're just sitting around with guitars and like talking about music that we've discovered, and it's nice. It feels very natural. It feels like how I always imagined you would like you'd sit around your friends with a guitar, you know, and you drink a beer and like all that kind of stuff. Like, but yeah, I suppose over the next few weeks we're just gonna get into a rehearsal room and just play and see what happens. You know?
So you do get to see each other and actually get to be in the same space now.
Yeah. So yeah, there's 4 of us here now. Diego, the other Connor, he moved to he's in Paris at the moment, but if restrictions keep the way that they are, it was not too hard for him to get the train over. You know, it's only like a 2-hour train or something from Paris to get here. So yeah, we're all here for a few weeks, so we're just gonna meet up and work on stuff and just, I don't know, be friends again.
Well, we look forward to it. I tell you what, it's bound to happen with a band who is so creative, because you all are so incredibly steeped in poetry, in literature, in the arts, in movies. You talked about Deeg, and didn't he direct the video for I Don't Belong? Like he dabbled there
Yeah,
in some videography.
yeah. He directed it from about he directed it from the other side of the country. Like
Did he really?
he directed yeah, he directed it because I think that was like the real hardcore lockdown. So he was on the west coast of Ireland and Graham was on the east coast. So he directed it from like the other side of the country, which is a pretty amazing feat, to be honest. But, yeah.
I was wondering if he was mad at Grian because I like getting into the North Atlantic waters at whatever time of year that was.
See, it's the Irish in us to be able to withstand it, but yeah, it might have been some built up rage from Reverend Green. Maybe stole a sandwich 3 years ago or something, and he was like,
And
"This is my chance to get him back."
That's it. Get in the water, Grian. What is the deal then? You brought up sandwiches. I do have to ask about the vegan cheese. What's the deal with vegan cheese and you guys?
I don't know. I think because Diego is vegan. Like I'm vegetarian, but like I eat vegan stuff. But I don't know. Like there's like some of us in the band are cheese purists, and some think that that who would think that vegan cheese is the devil. Others are vegan cheese, but for some reason when we were touring, just because I don't think it was getting eaten enough on our tour bus, it just seemed like every cupboard that you open, there'd just be like 5 packets of vegan cheese falling out, and like open a guitar case and there'd just be like vegan cheese everywhere. I don't know what. It was just like pretty sure it was like making up some of the construct of the tour bus at some point.
That sounds awful.
Yeah.
I do really look forward to hearing what comes out of quarantine because, again, you all are prolific and you're constantly writing. You have a very eclectic mix from the Dubliners to Sultans of Ping, which I think are as far like of a 180 like
Yeah.
that you could
Yeah,
get.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's you're only doing yourself a disservice by like limiting yourself to being like, this is what I'm passionate about, or this is what I listen to. I always think people who are like that are always missing out on something, and they're them being such strong believers in the one thing or the two things that they think is, good is just like, it sounds good in conversation to be that idealistic, but I think in the long run of like yourself developing as a person, like, and that's not even to do with music. I think that's just to do with life. Like, you should be capable of accepting any sort of, especially like art, for what it is, and being able to consume it and see how it affects you and changes you.
I do. Yeah. Well, I agree. And I think the world would be a better place if people could take that as a as an ideology for their life, really. So, all right.
Sure. YouTube comments would be a lot more bland, though, I think.
You're not wrong. All right. Well, Connor, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. And
no worries at all, man. It was a pleasure, yeah.
And again, we've been speaking with Connor Curley of Fontaines DC. You can find their most recent album, A Hero's Death, on Partisan and Cosign, out now. Fontaines DC on 90.9 The Bridge.